Hello and welcome to our discussions on financial statements. We'll continue to undertake the financial statement analysis, and in this example we will take the airlines industry, and under the airlines industry we'll take the airlines of three different countries: Singapore Airlines, Jet Airways and British Airways. But while doing this financial statement analysis, we would like to address some specific questions. For example, to start with, we would like to answer this question: are these companies using current sources to finance their business? And the second question we would like to answer is, do they have the ability to meet the short-term obligations? To answer these two questions, we would like to focus attention on the current assets and current liabilities of these three airways. Let us pick up the balance sheet of Singapore Airlines. We'll see the balance sheet of Jet Airways, an Indian company, and British Airways. In all the three cases, we've converted their main balance sheet into condensed balance sheet, and then calculated the working capital, and the working capital of the company shows the excess of the current assets over the current liabilities. So when we say excess of the current assets and current liability, we can see that the current working capital of Singapore Airlines is positive all through 4 years. The positive working capital means the Singapore Airlines is using part of the non-current sources to finance its current assets. In other words, the part of the current assets are financed by current liabilities, and part of the current assets are also financed by the non-current sources, which can also be seen here. The current assets account for 32 or around 30 to 40% of the total assets, whereas the current liabilities of Singapore Airlines is in the range of 24 to 25%. So where is the balance coming from? The balance money to finance the current assets is either coming from the non-current liabilities or equity. Is this the case with other two airlines? Let us see. In case of Jet Airways, the working capital for the last 2 years is negative. You can see the working capital is negative. So the negative working capital means part of the non-current assets have been financed by the current liabilities. We can see that the current liabilities account for 55% of the total sources, where the current assets account for 34%. So the balance 11%, what are they doing with the current liabilities? These current liabilities are used to finance the non-current assets. So that means unlike the Singapore Airlines, the Jet is actually using part of its current liabilities to finance the non-current assets. So the negative working capital reflects the use of the current liabilities to finance the non-current assets. Let us see the British Airways. In case of British Airways, the working capital is positive all through the years. All through 3 years, the working capital is positive. So Singapore Airlines, it is positive. Jet Airways is negative for 2 years, and the British Airways is positive all through. So in case of British Airways and Singapore Airlines, they are using non-current sources to finance the current assets, whereas in case of Jet Airways, part of the non-current assets have been financed by current liabilities. Will this create problem? Of course it will create problem if the current liabilities has a huge amount of the interest bearing current liabilities. We can have a look at that to observe the let us observe the balance sheet of Singapore Airlines. You can see that a significant part of the current liabilities is the trade creditors, okay, which is non-interest bearing current liabilities. In case of Jet Airways, a significant part of the current liabilities are not just the trade payables, but there are short-term borrowings which may be having interest. There are other current liabilities which may be the amount payable from the long-term liabilities. So Jet Airways, unlike the British Airways or the Singapore Airways, has a problem because their current liabilities have significant amount of interest bearing current liabilities. So in case of Singapore Airlines and British Airlines, British Airways, the working capital is positive, and in case of Jet it is negative. And besides being negative, a significant part of the Jet Airways current liabilities seems to have include the interest bearing current liabilities. Then to answer the second question, we will find the current ratio. The current ratio of Singapore Airlines, as expected, is greater than 1. Current ratio of Jet Airways is less than 1 for 2 years, and the current ratio of British Airways is also greater than 1. So it means the current assets are more than the current liabilities. So broadly speaking, prima facie we can say that the liquidity position of British Airways and Singapore Airlines seems to be better than the liquidity position of the Jet Airlines. To summarize, it is possible to see the balance sheet and understand the common features of the business, for example, the financing decisions and ability to meet its obligations by observing the financial items given on the balance sheet. We'll continue with this company and try to address some other queries of relating to these three companies, namely Singapore Airlines, Jet Airways and British Airways. Thank you.